Hi, how's it going? And welcome to Call It What You Want. I'm your favorite former U.S. men's national team player, Jimmy Conrad, alongside our resident head coach, Jesse Marsch, and our goal scorer extraordinaire, even though he hasn't hit the back of the net in quite some time, Charlie Chuckwagon Davies. And we have some fun things to discuss today, like Daryl Dike's triumphant return from a significant injury, which overage players we want to see in the Olympics. Every country is allowed 3 overage players each. The lure of Liga MX. We have some players that were in MLS that might be going down to Mexico. Our thoughts on the January camp roster and so much more, unless we run out of time. But first, we know that the beautiful game is known by many names around the world. I'm talking football, calcio, soccer, fuchi ball. So as we do to start off every show, we're going to play a little game. I'm going to be the host, and Jesse and Charlie, you are the contestants. So please buzz in, you two, if you think you have the right answer. And one of those names, this is the language. Where do you think it's from? The word is Nogomet. Nogomet. And we know that Chuck's been cheating the last two shows.
Chuck
so
he's got his team right now Googling Nogomets, right? He's getting in his ear all the possibilities.
He's got somebody behind the camera with a card up going, oh, Nogomet is from?
Nogomet. All right, I'm going to go. This is a Balkan word, and I'm going to go Serbian. Nogomet. The Serbians love the game of Nogomet.
I'm also gonna go Slavic. Bosnia.
Okay. I like where you guys are headed. Well, give me the first clue. Neither one of you got it exactly. First clue. This country's national team is currently ranked 54th in the world. The second clue. This national team is qualified for 2 World Cups, but failed to get past the group stage in either of them. World Cups for 2002 and 2010.
Okay, I think I got it.
Go for it.
Slovenia.
He got it, Jesse Marsch, everybody. He did it. Oh, eat that, Chuck.
See, I was feeling the Balkans.
Jesse got some help from somebody. That was
I think I'm 132nd Slovenian as well. This was an important win for me, Charlie. This was a really important win for me.
I felt pretty good about Bosnia too.
You guys were close. You guys were close. It was Slovenian. It was not Botswana. Botswana not been used the last 2 shows, but had been used previously every single show. So maybe one day we'll slip in Botswana to really throw you guys off. Okay. All right, let's talk a little January roster. I want to get your guys' reactions to what we saw, notable inclusions, notable exclusions. Chuck, I'm going to come to you first. I mean, who are you excited to see come into this camp, even though there are a ton of newbies here? And I guess in some ways, because Marko Mitrovic, the U23 coach, is also a part of the coaching staff for this January camp, he's going to be evaluating some players as he starts to put his roster together for the Summer Olympics in Paris in 2024. Or it is 2024. Geez, what do you got for us, inclusion?
Well, first, can we all come to an agreement that this is a U23 camp and not a typical January camp that's a full national team camp? I know it's the full team, but this is geared towards Olympics. This is not geared towards Nations League. This is not geared towards Copa America, because, in some instances, there's a possibility of bringing in MLS players that have had incredible seasons that just maybe aren't there yet or haven't played at the international stage where they get to impress Greg Berhalter and say, hey, maybe you should. I am ready to contribute to a Nations League roster or to a Copa America. And I just want to show you that I'm ready to take that next step. This is more unproven, for the most part, potential, and that some of these younger players are trying to make a case for the Olympics. That's what this camp is for me. Because you see a number of these players don't have the credentials, in my opinion, to make a real first team national team camp. However, given this is the national team for January, I'll say Miles Robinson and DeJuan Jones. Those are the 2 players who have had a lot of success in MLS, both as a team and individually, like as a collective unit. And so they've proven that they can play with the first team. They have to basically show a lot of these younger players how to conduct themselves, the level that is needed to train every single day, set the tone, set the standard. So I'm excited for those 2 in particular, because I know both have ambitions to play in Europe. I've spoken to both They both want to play in Europe at some point in their career.
Is this? Wait, did you say Miles Robinson?
Yes, he signed a short-term contract with Cincinnati. Nothing was like,
short?
Here's 5 years. It's a 1 year with a 1 year option.
Okay.
It was, okay. January is a very tough window to move, especially as a defender to go to the English Premier League, which is where he wants to play eventually. So go to the best team in MLS, in his opinion, and they're putting together quite a group. They have an identity. They need a center back. So as long as he can stay healthy, I think it's a great move for him in terms of if you're going to stay in MLS. And DeJuan Jones, again, it's another player who has aspirations to play in Europe. And I know a number of Bundesliga clubs were interested in him.
Very, very Kevin Durant of Miles Robinson to go to the best team in MLS and try to win a trophy and then bounce. I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
Hey, they're trying to get an MLS Cup.
Yeah, no, everybody wins there. Well, we'll see if they end up winning on the field. But yeah, I think, well, at least I can agree with you. I want to hear from Jesse as well, that this is clearly a camp that's being designated and more emphasis on the U23s and into that unproven talent in some ways. Not that it's unproven. Clearly, they have done enough to warrant this consideration into camp. But can they play at a level with the full national team coaching staff watching them, and obviously with the game against Slovenia as well on the 20th? Jesse, any surprise inclusions for you in this 25-man roster?
Yeah, I mean, listen, from my perspective, I don't know every single player, right? Some of these young guys are on MLS rosters, and I don't get to watch MLS every week. I had to go and Google some names just to familiarize myself with exactly.
Jesse, I think some of them were born after you retired, by the way.
No, it's true. And I'm 6 years removed from the league. So a lot of these guys, I may have worked with them a long time ago with the U14s or U15s youth national teams, but even then I think they're too young. So, but I'm excited to see what the camp looks like and then ultimately what the game will look like. I think the Slovenian roster will also be really light on big names, but has potential to be a good matchup of two young teams going at each other. I mean, I know Tolkien and I know Brian White. So obviously Brian was a guy that was young when I was at the New York Red Bulls and someone who was from the New Jersey area and we really liked and thought had big potential. And obviously he's had a really good season with the Vancouver Whitecaps. John Tolkien is a big personality. I think an important young player to be evaluating because as a left back, we don't have a plethora of young backs that we can play at that position. That's a little Three Amigos reference there for you guys, a plethora, Hefe. All right. And then Roman Celentano, right? I think we don't always talk about goalkeepers here, because none of us are goalkeepers. And I thought about, we represent, we have a backline representative, a midfield representative, and a striker representative. And so maybe we need to have a guest on the show once in a while that's a goalkeeper.
They're crazy, man. You never know what comes out of their mouth.
Yeah, that's true. But that could be entertaining as well, Jimmy. So anyways, but I think he's a high potential young goalkeeper who is establishing himself with Cincinnati. I think that he's a guy that you could potentially seeing not just on the Olympic team, but establishing himself in the future with the first team. So I think this is his first chance to be in a national team camp, and I think he'll show well. Okay,
I like the Brian White shout in particular. He's 27 years old, coming off 20 goals and 5 assists for the Vancouver Whitecaps in all competitions this season. And really, as a 27-year-old, that was the first time I got called into a camp. And 18 months after I got called into that camp, my first ever camp, I was playing in the World Cup. So there's a huge opportunity. And I know this camp is a little bit different than before, but to be around the coaching staff and to show that you might have a little something that could add to the bigger group is what I set out to do. I kept my goals manageable and still within reach and just tried to be a little bit better than the people I was competing against. And I want to be that, like, for if I'm looking at this, I'm walking into this camp. What I would think about as a player is I need to be, or I want to be, one of the best players here. I need to make sure that I am the creme de la creme of these 25 players so that I can potentially get a chance into the next group and then continue to just take step by step. I'm sure they're all, well, we'll see how they're all approaching it, but that's, I think, was the best way for me to manage that. And Brian White's an interesting one for him. I'm pulling for him because he's got that late bloomer tag, which I have. And I parlayed that into some fun experiences and some big games. So that would be my surprise inclusion. I was excited for Brian White in particular. Now let's get to exclusion. Chuck, I'm coming back to you. Any big surprises of players that were left off the list? You have a couple to pick from: Jesus Ferreira, Jordan Morris, Brandon Vazquez. Anybody else that stands out for you?
No, I am surprised that Jesus Ferreira is not on this roster. Just given that he's been one of the players that Greg has admired throughout his tenure, and just in terms of giving opportunities, calling him up. He's gotten a considerable amount of caps. He was a main part of the World Cup qualifying team. So for him to not be in this camp, I'm a little bit shocked. So I don't know if there's any other details about him not being included. Is there potential transfer? Is he injured? But if he's 100% healthy, that for me is a glaring exclusion.
Yeah, that's I feel like there's more to it. I mean, Walker Zimmerman is another notable exclusion, but he's coming off an Achilles injury that had been bothering him throughout the season. There always seems to be a little bit of a note. Brandon Vazquez looking to finalize his deal to go down to Mexico with Monterrey. So there's all these little things, but I haven't really heard anything from Ferreira's perspective. Jesse, how about you? Any name that you thought should be in there that wasn't?
Yeah, I think you guys named some of them. I would also include Aaron Long. Not sure what's happening with him, but I think obviously he's 31 and getting a little bit older, but potential for him to be part of this group. And we'll talk later about the Olympic team, but I think there's some connections that you could make there. So it does seem to be a really young group. And with the eye on the Olympics, I think, it makes sense that some of the older guys that we would normally see in a January camp or expect to see in a January camp aren't there this time.
You could throw in Roldan as well, right? Roldan and Morris. Yeah, that's Seattle crew.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in Jalen Neal, who was hurt with the Galaxy the second half of the season in MLS. From what I understand, is a hernia surgery. I would expect him to be back by now, since it happened in July, August, September area, and he's not. And I feel like he's got some tremendous upside. So for him,
what about your guy Josh?
Josh, which one?
Winder.
Josh Winder. Listen, I was hoping he would be in, but he's not, because he completely disappeared when he went to Benfica. So I don't know. I was hopeful he would be in, just to see where he is, get a temperature of how things are going for him, bring him into the group, maybe get his energy up, and his, because sometimes a little bit of that confidence needs to come from someplace, especially if you're by yourself somewhere in a club and it's not going well for you. But no Josh Winder at the moment. But Jalen Neal, I thought was a bit of a surprise, mainly from, I just thought he'd be recovered from his injury at this point. But probably a conversation happening with the Galaxy as to where he is, and if he's not 100%, it's not worth risking him. But he was part of the January camp in 2023, and I thought he did well, and I want to see more of Jalen Neal moving forward. All right, we're going to take our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to talk about our overage players, who we want to see join the U23s at the Olympics in Paris. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy alongside Charlie and Jesse, and we're going to get into it about the 2024 Olympics that are happening in Paris. The U.S. has finally qualified for the first time, and I feel like forever. And
since 2008.
Since 2008, when Chuck was still playing and representing us at the Olympics, which is really crazy to say out loud. Yes, I agree with you on that. Let's talk about our overage players, because what happened with whoever runs the Olympics, or I don't know if it's FIFA, I don't know who the governing body with regard to this competition, initially, or at least the last two Olympics, you could have 23 players. Now they're rolling it back to what it was when Chuck was still playing. You could only have 18. And you can, of course, name some alternates if anybody gets hurt. But 3 of those 18 can be over the age of 23. They could be Jesse Marsch could come out and play. It doesn't even matter. You could go out and get whoever you want to join it. However, clubs they don't have to release their players. It's not like a proper World Cup or an international break where they're expected to release their players. Clubs don't have to do it. So I think MLS players should come into the consideration, because I'm sure MLS players, that conversation will be a lot easier to get players released for that, or at least that's what I'm thinking, Jimmy, in my head.
I think an important context in that is it is a youth tournament, because you're allowing your players to go there for the potential investment that a club might make in that player. So
that's great.
MLS is a selling league. So as a selling league, if the U.S. Olympic coach says, I want your player to be a part of my squad, he's going to play, then the simple answer is go ahead, because you're allowing your player to play on the international stage to basically increase his value. So why wouldn't you? And that happens with a lot of players who are, let's say Gio Reyna is still not playing at Dortmund, wants to move away. Well, is Dortmund going to say, no, he can't go to that? They're going to say, go ahead. Because then if you have a great tournament, they can sell you for more money, right? So it works in that way for the most part.
What's interesting too, and I love that ad, right? You could go there, you could perform well, and maybe it raises your value by 5-10 million or whatever it may be based on how you perform. Neymar, I'm going to use him as an example. He really wanted to play in the Olympics in 2016 in Brazil. And so his club didn't want to let him go, but it meant something to him. I really think the Olympics matter probably, or feels like more for the players than the clubs at times. And Jesse, you could probably speak to that a little bit. But this is a huge opportunity for us and for our players to cut their teeth in high-pressure situations, which is what we want as we continue to grow our player pool. Any overage player, Jesse, for you, and obviously any comments you want to make about the Olympics overall?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few thoughts about this. So, I have guys that I would love to see on the team, but they're playing in Europe. And let me give you a little bit of perspective of how things are thought about in Europe. When I took over Leipzig, it was the year of the Euros and the year of the Olympics. And I had Dani Olmo on my team. And Dani asked me, he wanted to play, he was playing for Spain. He wanted to play in both the Euros and in the Olympics. And, when you look at Spain in a tournament and whether the youth tournaments or the highest level tournaments, you're always thinking, okay, they have potential to get to the final, but probably for sure the semifinal. So when I looked at then Dani's overall commitment, if he wanted to do both, basically over a 8-week period, he was only going to be free for 4 days. And then he wanted to go so badly that he wanted to come directly to camp after the Olympics. And normally we give 3 weeks off in Europe after any major tournament for players to have time off, have a vacation, enjoy some free time, because often it's the only time they have all year. So reluctantly and against the club's wishes when I was at Leipzig, I allowed Dani to play in the Olympics. And I did it because I wanted to invest in our relationship long-term and show him that I wanted to support him in a big way. But he came back. I gave him a week off after the Olympics. I think they went to the semifinal in both. And then when he came back to training, he got hurt 2 weeks later. And in my time in Leipzig, I think he only played 20 minutes for me. He hardly ever played. And this was a factor in how the team performed. And
wait, Jesse, do you regret letting him go now?
I do regret letting him go. I do. And it was like his dream to play in the Olympics, right? But I think in the end, his these players, I think Dani Olmo is getting paid $5 million, $6 million by Leipzig a year. And his commitment to the team is the most, and the club is the most important thing. And I at that moment, I let the team down and I let the club down by allowing him to do that. So if I had to go back and do it again, I think it was a mistake. I would have said, sorry, Dani, I know it's your dream, but you have to choose between the Euros and the Olympics. And
the Euros is a competition that he'd have to go no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but if your dream is truly to go to the Olympics, then and Euros, you could probably visiting to going again, but it's always difficult for players to manage this, clubs to manage this, coaches, the whole bit. So, when I thought about our Olympic team, the guy I would love to see the most in the middle of it all is Tyler Adams, because I think, he's a real leader. He could help push the team, but I don't think it's best for him, especially coming off of injury, to now be trying to commit to 2 tournaments in one summer. And he needs to limit his overall time and training because he can be injury prone. So then I thought about, all right, which guys do I think, what is necessary when you bring in an overage player? Well, you need some experience, but I think you also need real leaders, someone that can bring the team together, someone that all the young players in the team can look up to, that they like, but they see the way they train, they see their mentality. And then I thought of Aaron Long. And I think Aaron Long will probably not be in consideration for Copa America. Maybe he'll be right on the bubble, so depending on injuries and who's available and everything else. But he's still a guy with some international experience. 31 years old is not so old that he starts to push himself outside of of what is the highest level of performance. And if you know Aaron Long, the one thing about him is he loves being in a team. He loves being a leader. He loves engaging the entire group. And I think when you have a team like the Olympic team, that's not a real team that's coming together in a short amount of time. You need not just a quality overage player that they can look to as in terms of what he can deliver from a performance perspective on the pitch, but you also need somebody that in the group is a real galvanizer, that loves to be around the team and can really bring the spirit together so that gives them the best chance to perform. So that would be the guy. That would be the guy I'd be thinking about.
Yeah, what's interesting, and I'm glad you brought up a center back because I feel like the U23s are pretty thin in that particular area, which is why I think this is a really important camp for Miles Robinson and potentially James Sands as well, who have shown they can play in that position, they can hold their own. But I don't know if either one of those is the type of leader that you're describing. So I'm kind of curious as to which one can step up. And this is a big camp for them to demonstrate that they can have that type of leadership and can galvanize a group and help a team work through adversity on the fields when things maybe aren't going well. How do you smooth things out? How do you regain control of the game and all that good stuff? So my vote would be someone in the center back position, Miles Robinson or James Sands. How about you, Chuck Davies?
So when I look at this Olympic group, their strength is in the midfield. They have a number of players from the U20 World Cup team to players who are playing in MLS, even guys like Tanner Tessman, who are playing in Italy, has played in Serie A, now playing in Serie B, have a ton of experience, who are seasoned vets. Kind of reminds me of when I was coming up under 23s, that our midfield was a strength. We had a number of seasoned vets, and I look at this group and I'm really impressed with the depth that they have in the midfield. Josh Atencio, Jack McGlynn, Diego Luna, Gianluca Busio, Benja Kramaski, Paxton Aronson, Tanner Tessman, Aiden Morris, Obed Vargas. So you don't need, because typically you look at the spine of the group, you say, okay, where can we add the 3 overage players? The midfield, I don't think they need an overage player. Now, center back is the weakest in this pool. And so in my mind, you could bring 2 center backs, overage players. And the third would probably be a striker, because you love what you've seen in terms of the options. If you have Balogun and Pepe, who are both age eligible, but like Jesse said, if you're playing and you're a big part of the team, Balogun's not going to be allowed to leave, because he'll say, okay, you got Copa America, you're not playing in both. Ricardo Pepe's an interesting one, because if he's not going to be a starter per se for Copa America, he's not going to start with 2 strikers and him and Balogun, or he's not really, alternating games between Balogun if Balogun's form had dropped off or he becomes injured. Maybe there's a scenario where you say, we're not going to bring Pepe to Copa America because we want him to start and lead the line in the Olympics. But I mean, Josh Sargent would probably be the guy that I'd want, because if you have Pepe and Balogun, you're only playing 1 striker, then maybe Josh Sargent would be the perfect guy to bring in as an overage striker in this group. But I think when it comes down to the center backs, I'm looking at Mark McKenzie and Austin Trusty, because Austin Trusty is a left-footed center back. We don't have too many left-footed center backs, so someone who earned a hell of a lot of minutes and respect in the championship last season with Birmingham. I spoke to all the Arsenal players, including Arteta and Odegaard, in the summer when they came over to DC United for the All-Star game.
On the flex, dude. Come on.
And they were really impressed. They were impressed with Trusty. They were like, he looks like a different player this time around in training. He's holding up. He's not standing up being like, oh, this player's way off the pace. So they were really impressed with Trusty, and they thought there was a chance that maybe he doesn't leave. He ultimately left for Sheffield United, and I don't blame him, because he left for a chance to play, and he's getting consistent minutes with Sheffield. So in terms of a long-term play, I mean, Trusty's 23 years old. Mark McKenzie is just aged out. I think he's 20. He's going to be 24. So I think those are 2 players that fit the dynamic, because you also want the overage players to not feel out of place, because you don't want them to be, it's almost like, I don't get how you guys are vibing, like you want someone who's like still feels like part of the group and guys will look up to, yet, they still have a future potentially with the U.S. men's national team. So I like the 2 center backs and maybe a striker for the 3 overage players, and McKenzie and Trusty would be probably the 2 center backs that I looked up to, because I don't think Chris Richards and Miles Robinson would be allowed to leave.
Bonus content for you. We asked for 1. Chuck gave us 3 names. You love to see it. That's why you like and subscribe. Call it what you want. We're going to take our next break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about Americans abroad and the performances that they've been getting into since we last had our show. Don't go anywhere. Guess what? Call it what you want is back. We're talking Americans abroad. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Jesse Marsch. And let's get into some notable results for our national team player pool. Norwich 1-1 against Bristol Rovers. Josh Sargent gets the start. Doesn't score this time around, but it's nice to see him healthy and getting valuable minutes. Lens 2-2 versus Monaco in the French Cup. Monaco ends up winning in penalties. 6-5. Balogun played the full 90 minutes. Way to go, big guy. Empoli losing at home to AC Milan. Christian Pulisic got an assist at the end to Chaka Traore. Musa came on right fresh from being injured. Played the last 20 minutes. That's great news. Salernitana, a 2-1 loss. They had it till the very end. Juve comes back and wins. McKinney and Weah both start again. Juve 2 points off the top spot. McKinney, by the way, had a diving header that maybe he wants back. He almost scored. Would have been a fantastic goal. The West Brom 4-1 over Aldershot in the FA Cup. Daryl Dike scored on his return from a ruptured Achilles. He's been out for 9 to 10 months, and he comes back and scores. When you see the goal, if you go find the highlight, you can just tell how much it means to him and how excited he was to be healthy and hitting the back of the net. So, Jesse Marsch, coming to you first. Who stood out for you, Americans abroad, in these recent games?
Daryl Dike.
Good choice.
Yeah. So good segue. Really good segue there. You're right. If you see him score the goal, he celebrates like it's the World Cup final. And I think just to be back on the pitch and then to score a goal, it was kind of an opportunity where the ball dropped in the box and he hit a volley and it went in. So it was an opportunistic goal. He played a part in the first 3 goals, actually. So he pressed on the first goal and helped win the ball. And so he was pretty active for being just back and only getting 45 minutes out of the match. I thought he looked a little bit rusty and clumsy at certain moments. And listen, Daryl Dike is not always the most elegant player. He's a player with power and speed, and he likes to run and be in the box and bump guys. So overall, I like him. I like his personality. I like that he plays fearless. He goes after games. He's an imperfect player and an imperfect striker, but he's a guy that wills himself into games. And that's basically for 45 minutes. What he really did is he made it very difficult against the center backs that he played against. He was a part of a lot of different build-up moments. The game was a bit open, so it allowed him to run, but it also meant that fitness-wise, it was not the easiest game for him. But I would say as a 45 minutes back after 10 months being out, this was a really good first entry into being back in the team. And I think it'll give him confidence. Clearly, he's excited, and it'll be fun to watch him continue to move forward here in the next weeks and months.
Jesse, I'm coming right back to you. Do you feel like he will have a legitimate chance to break through with our national team, given who we have at striker?
I think the depth chart's gotten better at striker. Like if you would have asked me before Balogun and maybe 9 months ago when he got hurt, I would have said that he would have been a bigger part of the possibilities of players that could contribute. It's gotten tougher. But if he keeps performing, this is always the thing for strikers, right? If you're on the pitch, if you're scoring goals, if you're getting assists, then of course the national team coach has to take a look at you. And West Brom's a good team. They're competing in the championship. They have a good coach in Carlos Cordoban, and they play some good football. So let's see if he keeps performing. I think he has a chance.
All right, Chuck. How about you? Notable results. If you want to touch upon DK as well as our resident number 9, we wouldn't say no to that.
No, I mean, I couldn't be happier for Daryl Dike. I've had a history with injuries and setbacks, and to see a player overcome, months and months of rehab to get back on the pitch, doing what he loves, scoring a goal, and the celebrations. I know what that feels like. I know that moment and what it does for you, and you want more, and you're going to push for more. And so now it's to have that patience and not thinking you're going to go 0 to 100, that you got to work your way up slowly. and not try and get there too fast to catch up to where you were. It takes time, but I couldn't be happier for Daryl Dike. It's a huge step in the right direction for him to try and fulfill his potential. We saw him score so many goals in the championship initially when he went on loan from Orlando City. So I hope that he continues to stay healthy and continues to bang them left and right. But the player that I wanted to mention was Timothy Weah. Midweek, he scored that absolute golazo. Boom! 25 minutes against Salernitana in the Copa Italia. And then he came back to play the following match in Serie A against Salernitana, and they won 2-1. He played 81 minutes, so he earned a start, 27 of 28 in passing, accurate, dynamic. And we all know, to play for Allegri, you have to understand tactics and do what he wants. And I love that he is just so flexible. He's committed to the team. He's committed to what Allegri wants out of that wingback spot. And it just shows the type of player he is. He'll do whatever is asked of him. Whether it's right back, left back, which we saw at Lille, whether it's the U.S. men's national team playing in a more advanced role in the right wing back and just stretching him with his pace. I think he's gotten a lot better with his final ball as well as his decision making. So he's really developing well at Juve. And I spoke to him after the Nations League final win.
Another flex. God.
No.
Down to the flex.
And I always said, hey,
his Rolodex is massive.
I'm like, your father is obviously one of the best strikers of all time. Like, you have no aspirations to play striker because, the number 9 spot was lacking for a bit. And he's like, Charlie, wing spot, the wing back spot is the position I want to play at the club level for my career. I think that's where I'll have the most longevity and I'll be consistent. And I thought, wow, okay. I didn't see that. And here he is excelling at Juve. And if you can make it at Juve in that wing back spot, you can play anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to George Weah, and we were talking about being the president of Liberia.
Talk about Rolodex, Jesse. I know you have a
George
Rolodex as well. All right, so I actually want to put a button on that Daryl Dike conversation because he's only 23, so he's got plenty of time to get healthy and find that consistency that I think we're all talking about. And when he does, I think there's a lot of promise in his future. For me, I'm going to be Captain Obvious, though, with my American abroad. I'm going with Christian Pulisic. Maybe you've heard of him, everybody. He has been on fire. And in this game against Empoli, 90 minutes, he had an assist there at the very end. He did really well to pick up the ball at the top of the box and just waited. He was very patient doing his slaloming through the defense. Obviously, they were trying to push to get a goal, and he laid off a perfect pass to get finished first time by Chaka Traore. He's got 3 goals and 4 assists in his last 8 matches in all competitions. You got to respect that. 7 goals and 6 assists this season in all competitions for AC Milan. And he has been fantastic. And it really goes to show, speaking about health, that when you get health, when you get some trust and belief, that can go a long way. And I think Christian Pulisic has proven all the hands wrong. Plus, he had a chip on his shoulder, too, right? He had something to prove to Chelsea and everybody that didn't believe in him that he is a fantastic player. And what a season he is having. It's really, really special. All right, notable fixtures midweek right now. We got Liverpool versus Fulham. That's a League Cup semifinal. Tim Ream's still out with a calf injury. Anthony Robinson will be a big test for him in this particular match. Milan will be taking on Atalanta in the Copa Italia quarterfinals. You can watch that on Thursday on the Golazo channel. Juve is taking on Frosinone in the same competition on the Golazo channel as well. Those are both 3 p.m. on Thursday. And that's pretty much it. But we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we're talking transfer news and MLS players leaving to go to Liga MX. And how does everybody feel about that? We're going to hear from us. We obviously want to hear from you at some point along the way, too. But don't go anywhere. We got a big conversation coming up next. Oh, isn't everybody lucky? Call it what you want. We got a lot more to talk about. I'm Jimmy alongside Charlie and Jesse and some transfer news to discuss. We have MLS players, Cade Cowell, yes, and Brandon Vázquez, yes, heading down to Monterrey and Chivas respectively. And what's interesting is that Cade Cowell just got his Mexican passport. He's a dual national. And I don't know if you guys saw this fit that he's wearing, but it doesn't really give off vibes of this is one of the biggest moments in our life. I don't know. This is all reportedly.
If you're coming out as fit, it's got to be Really,
which part of it? He's wearing, I don't know. He's wearing Crocs with socks, which that feels like a taboo already.
That sounds like Clint Dempsey right there.
You
talk about socks and Crocs, that is Dempsey all day.
It reminds me of Serginho Dest wearing a basketball outfit to Messi's retirement or leaving Barcelona. They were just like, I don't know if this really fits the situation, but whatever.
Does he have those giblets? Does he have the giblets in the Crocs?
You know what? We got to zoom in, I think, to see for sure. But he does have now the possibility of representing Mexico and now to play for Chivas, right? Because of the rules that they have in place that only Mexicans are allowed to play for their club. I think he would be the first Mexican American to play for Chivas, which would be history in itself and very cool for him. So let's just talk about this opportunity, Jesse, having MLS players leave to go play in Liga MX, which for me just feels like them going to Europe, right? You're getting out of your comfort zone or what you've known up until this point, and you're testing yourself somewhere else. So for me, this is a positive to continue to grow as a player, even though they're not guaranteed playing time, which I think they'll be hard pressed for Brandon Vázquez to get significant playing time initially at Monterrey, and then the same for Cade Cowell at Chivas.
I say, why not? I like that they're testing themselves and putting themselves in a unique environment and challenging themselves to play at a higher level. Obviously, there's always finances involved, and the one thing about Liga MX is that they have finances there, and so players can make a lot of money. It's a totally different style of a league. It's an intelligent league and a league with a lot of technical ability, and those games are not easy, and they're often very wide open, and the weather is not, you're playing at elevation, you're playing at heat. So there's a lot of variables for what that league is and what it means to the development of a player. But yeah, again, for me, I think each player has to choose his own endeavor. And when players want to try new things and test themselves and take themselves out of their comfort zones and the boundaries of what they have felt comfortable in, I say power to them, go for it. We're all with you. And then the question is, okay, how does it fit with the U.S. national team?
I think what's interesting about this conversation, Chuck, and you mentioned before, MLS is a selling league. Should MLS be worried that we're losing some of our top players, some of our top young players in particular, to Mexico?
No.
Okay, cool. Moving on.
Yeah, Brandon Vázquez had been, it seems to me, looking to make that next step in his career, whether it was Europe, which he's expressed actually on the Golazo network on Morning Footy, that he wants to play in Europe. He still has ambition. But if that's not happening, then guess what? You're still going to get a massive increase in salary and go to Monterrey, which is a team that's second in Liga MX. So I think for Brandon Vázquez, it's still a no-brainer. If you want to take another step in your career, Monterrey to go play in Liga MX is still a great step for him. And in terms of Cade Cowell, he started with the U20 U.S. team in the World Cup. Still in MLS, not consistent with his final ball or finishing. He has those intangibles you can't teach: the quickness, the toughness. You love those attributes that he has. But in terms of the technique and the quality in those final moments, the composure still needs to drastically increase to be effective with the U.S. men's national team, first team. And so, again, from San Jose to go to Chivas, massive step. So I'm all for players taking steps to get better, to help push them in competition and training every day. Chicharito is also rumored to be heading to Chivas as well. So
massive steps, a big claim. I mean, I know the environment.
Chivas
the earthquakes
in San Jose, that's not a massive step.
I think it is in a lot of the intangibles. The pressure is going to be obviously a lot different, right? If you're walking around San Jose and you lost, probably not that big of a deal. But if you lose the Club America and you're walking around where Chivas in Guadalajara, yeah, you're going to be under it, and there's a different type of pressure. So yes, there's a lot of different ways it's massive. I'm on the field. Do you think it's that big of a step? I don't necessarily watch Chivas Guadalajara and think, God damn, those guys are amazing. They have some players in their moments where they're good. What's that?
Do you think the opposite when you look at San Jose?
No, I don't think the opposite.
Like,
I don't think the opposite. No. I don't look at the Quakes and go, okay, they're awesome.
Right.
But they're working towards building something, obviously, under Luchi Gonzalez. I'm just saying that I don't think the level doesn't seem as big of a gap as maybe it once was. But in terms of everything else around it, and in terms of the growth of that pressure and those expectations and having to perform maybe at a level where he could feel comfortable knowing I'll probably get to play kind of regularly with San Jose because we maybe don't have the depth, because we don't have the salary cap, or he doesn't know that, or maybe he does, but that's not really his decision-making. But there's going to be more competition for spots, I think, with Chivas. So again, that's another intangible. But in terms of the level, I don't know. This is probably a whole separate podcast.
I look at it more as like a stylistically, what is it going to be like? Because the league in Mexico is very different than what it is in MLS. But I think he plays with power. He plays with aggressiveness. Yeah, he's a little bit reckless at times and not like always raw, perfectly the technical player. Yeah, he can be a little bit raw. But for me, when I get young players, those are the kind of guys that I love to get. And those are the kind of guys that I love to work with, because I think I can really improve their abilities, their intelligence, and you can see that the upside is massive. So even when he was 16,
that's what you did with Erling Haaland, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of guys.
Who is one player that you got
take full credit
that had those type of attributes, Jesse, that you thought, you know what, he's raw, but damn, he's got a lot of things that you can't teach.
I mean, there were a lot of those. Erling was one of those guys. Hee-chan Wang. We had Benji Šeško, the Slovenian that's now at Leipzig, Karim Adeyemi, who's now at Dortmund, all guys with power and speed. But when you first saw them, and if you put them through a passing exercise, you would think this is not a professional footballer. But then as time goes on, and now you see how they can apply their power and speed and strength, and you can give them clues as how to maximize what their potential could be, then you start to really have some fun. Right now you have something to work with, and day after day you really see maturity and you see development. And that's why when I saw Cade Cowell at 16, I was like, wow. He at New York Red Bulls when he was young, I was asking, can we get this kid here? What can we do to bring him into what we think about football and see if we can help him mature? So yeah, I mean, I think it will be a good test for him to see if he can understand culturally how the league works, how important that club is. But then I think the potential for him to go on the pitch and play against some smaller, given intelligent Mexican defenders, but to use his power and speed to see how he can create advantages, I think it'll be really interesting to see how this works out.
So you try to trade for him?
I actually thought that Chuck was winning on the flex department, but I believe that Jesse has taken the lead here with all these names that are being dropped. So it's a fair play to Jesse for taking the lead there.
Hee-chan Wang, another one.
I said, okay, game over.
Game over. Game, set, match. Jesse Marsch here. Also, official announcement, Georgi Mihailovic has officially signed for the Colorado Rapids. Chris Armas making some moves, getting Mihailovic and Zach Steffen into the team, which is going to bolster their chances of having some success. Almost, that's a guarantee, but it puts them in the right direction. All right, we're going to take our last break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we got our final thoughts, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. We got our final thoughts here. I'm Jimmy with Jesse and Charlie, and we unfortunately have some incredibly sad news with Franz Beckenbauer, known as Der Kaiser in Germany, dying at the age of 78. He won the 1978 World Cup with West Germany as a player. He won the 90 World Cup with West Germany as a head coach. He's a two-time Ballon d'Or winner. He won 3 European Cups, also known as the Champions League, with Bayern, 74, 75, 76, back-to-back. Incredible, won 4 Bundesliga titles with Bayern as well. He played in the NASL with the New York Cosmos from 1976 to 1984 seasons, trying to grow the game here in the States, and we thank him for that and for all of his contributions to the sport. This guy is an absolute legend. I once was coached by Bob Gansler, who's our 1990 World Cup coach here for the U.S., in Kansas City, and I had a game where I was just on fire. Now I was bringing everything down in the back, and I was dribbling out of tough situations and making it look super easy. And I got the compliment of all compliments when Bob Gansler, who has German background, Austrian background, and loved Franz Beckenbauer, he compared me to Der Kaiser, and it was still one of the big thrills that, and I should say, Bob Gansler doesn't just throw out compliments like that. So I took that one to heart, and it was a special game for me. And I don't think I ever played as well since. But
now you're name dropping. Okay.
But okay.
I think that's why. Thankfully, Bob doesn't coach anymore. If that's the kind of moniker he's handing out to Jimmy.
Unbelievable. But back to Franz Beckenbauer. You've been around Jesse for a really long time. Thankfully, somebody is older than me on this podcast, and
I doubt it.
What are you saying about Franz and his impact on the game?
Yeah. The two Germans that when I grew up, that I worshipped the most were Franz Beckenbauer and Rudi Völler. And I had a chance to meet both of them in my time in Germany. And the one thing I'll say about Franz Beckenbauer is when you go to any country, right, there's history of the game, and then there's opinions around what the history of the game was and what players were like. And Franz Beckenbauer was the one person that no matter who you spoke to in Germany had nothing but glowing things to say about the player he was, about the person, about the coach, about the manager. And he just carried himself with class. And when you were kind of in his space, you could feel his greatness. So obviously, this is a big loss for, I think, the football world, for the German football world, for sure. This will be a mourning in that country. And somebody who I think is loved more than anyone else in the game inside Deutschland. So I would say what an incredible player and person. And I was honored to meet him. And he will be missed, certainly in Germany, but I think worldwide he will be someone who in the game played such a big role and will be dearly missed.
Yeah, very well said. And yeah, I'm curious to see how much outpouring and love and support they're going to be of Franz Beckenbauer, given how much impact he had on the game, not only in Germany, but around the world. So we're going to call it here. End of the show. Call it what you want, though. This particular show feels like name drop what you want or flex what you want. That's what we're going to start calling it from here on out. But make sure you drop us a follow wherever you get your podcast. Take a few seconds, if you wouldn't mind, to leave us a rating. And hopefully it's a really good one. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, a review, that would be fantastic. And catch us on the CBS Sports Golazo Network. So thank you again for all of your support. We'll see you next time. Later.